feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast coming at you Thursday afternoon, right after the Wolves' first preseason game of the season. It's October 5th, and I got Kyle Theige here with me to give our immediate reactions, thoughts, whatever, from the Wolves' first game. And I don't know, how long has it been since the Wolves played a game? May, June, July, 5 months probably since the Timberwolves played a game. I thought overall a really encouraging first performance. I mean, I know it's preseason or whatever. It was a bit of a damper where you get the news that Anthony Edwards is not going to play in the game. Apparently, he rolled his ankle a little bit or tweaked his ankle at practice on Wednesday. Doesn't appear to be serious, but missed this game. Hopefully, plays on Saturday. Finch said after the game. Kyle, that was pretty much the only thing I could point to that was discouraging from this game. I mean, the Wolves obviously came out and in the first half are kind of killing Dallas when Dallas was actually playing all their starters. The starters didn't play in the second half for them, but it was a pretty dominant performance for the Wolves. What did you find to be the most encouraging element of that game?
I mean, just the basketball's back, right? Like, I feel like I spent way too much of my summer listening to, like, Young Gravy and trying to dissect color palettes of different jerseys. So, as soon, you started the morning off. Again, it's kind of a morning game out here on the West Coast because it was a 9 a.m. tip. But it was, the Ant stuff was like, oh, that's a bummer because you're excited. You've waited this long. But for him not to play, I was also like, hey, anytime he can not play, it's probably better when he's, just put him in bubble wrap and we'll see you on October 25th or whatever. But I mean, even if you wanted to be the biggest hardo in the world, how do you, I guess Luka Garza was third in the team in shot attempts. I don't know. Like, that might be a critical thing, but I just wanted to see how they looked. See if guys like Nikhil could kind of continue that momentum that he had in FIBA. See, see how Kyle Anderson plays with goggles. Like, does he, because that's an actual, all jokes aside, like, it's kind of a big adjustment. But even there was like little things like with Ant out, and we've talked about how this team's depth is, they were the deepest team in franchise history last season, clearly deeper this year, right? I like, as people, guys like Austin Rivers and Jalen Noel and stuff, but you're giving minutes now to just better players. Shake Milton is what you would hope Jalen Noel would become, but he's just the actual version of it. So, I thought Troy Brown Jr. was pretty good. And from up and down the roster, I mean, Carl came out and let that one rip.
I was saying, man, you're going deep. I feel like for me it was Cat. Like,
yeah, for sure. I mean, the first, yep.
The most encouraging thing was Cat, and not just that. Like, he played well and scored a lot. Like, I thought, and it was pretty apparent just watching, is kind of having the light bulb on in his head of like, all right, I'm out here with Rudy and this personnel grouping. I'm doing X, Y, and Z, and flipping that switch when he was out there as just the five. Like, I noticed right away, like from the jump, like Luka is guarding Cat. That was their defensive matchup, though. Didn't see Cat post that up at all. That's because Rudy was out there, right? And that would have clogged up the spacing. But as soon as Cat's out there in the second quarter as the five by himself without Rudy, he goes into the post. It wasn't Luka that was on him at that point. Now he's being guarded by a center. He's being guarded by Dwight Powell, and you started going to the inside with him. I thought Carl did a great job of playing in all of his areas, right? And effectively spacing and finding his teammates through that, whether that be the post, whether that be, again, the post when he's the five, the perimeter orientation when he's out there with Rudy, playing as a spacer, as a pick and roll player, situationally looking for his drive. But all three of those elements, right? The three main things with Cat, the 3-point shot, the drive, and the post up, we saw all three of those things. And I think we saw them at the right time, which I think would have been totally understandable if they weren't there yet. And if there was more collisions of spacing or misunderstandings of where and what to be. I mean, Carl came in, looked fresh. It looked like a lot like the DR version of Carl, and that version of Carl really fits this roster, I think.
And he did, what, 7 3-point attempts in 17 minutes? He didn't really play in the second half, but he also kind of, 8 was always a number I had just made up in my mind. It's like any game that Carl plays in, he should take 8 threes. And you could argue that's a low number at times, but yeah, they obviously started Nikhil in place of Ant, but even like Mike Conley, just not a big stat line or whatever, but just kind of kept the thing moving. He looks
plus 22.
Yeah, he looks super rejuvenated too. I know you had talked about with I think Chris earlier this week, just like that'd be a good way to describe Mike. I think is rejuvenated.
Yeah.
Despite being a little older, he's being asked to do some things now in Minnesota that, in Utah he was more so relegated to just kind of that type of quarterback, that just kind of hands the ball off and a game manager.
Andy Dalton.
Yeah, basically. But in Minnesota now, it's like, hey, no, we do need you to kind of score again and be a threat. So, yeah, from a box score standpoint, as you have on the screen now, I don't really know. I mean, pick another guy that you're like, I thought he was great. But overall, it was just, and this is probably meaningful coming from someone like me who can be very optimistic. Like, they did everything you wanted. But it was more so like, I mean, when I saw the starting 5 for Dallas, I was like, are they tanking in October? Like, I didn't know half of the guys on the roster. Also, I think Dallas played 19 guys, which is fun to go look at their box score. But overall, like I said, everyone kind of just did what you wanted them to do. Jaden, I think, got a little handsy there, but he also had really good. Luka Doncic has to hate playing against him. But yeah, everyone top to bottom, every player played, I think. Other than maybe some of like the 10-day guys or the 2-way guys. Yeah. But yeah, I thought it was a really good first performance, and you saw a lot of guys carry over some of the success that either they ended last season with, like a Mike Conley, or like Nikhil, that he kind of brought all throughout FIBA.
And right away, too, right? Like the first quarter was, I thought, really encouraging. Like they got into, we kind of keep doing the football thing, but like the scripted structure of like, the first 10 plays or whatever are structured. I feel like, or not even structured, but planned in advance. It seemed like they knew what they wanted to get to, and they executed that really well. I think you'd say, to bring up another player who stood out, and particularly early on, was Nikhil, and just hitting shots. I mean, they took 12 threes in the first quarter, made 6 of those. Nikhil made both of his. Mike made the one he took. Shake Milton, once he came in the end of the first quarter, made 2 threes there too, which is like, I think with Shake, that is a inflection point for him in how impactful he can be. He shot like 38% from 3 for Philly last season, but it wasn't really on high volume. If he can boost that volume, I think it's going to be very important for him that he's looking for that 3-point shot as a spacer a little bit more in the construction of this roster. So I found that really encouraging right away. Kind of the role players fitting into a role around kind of the meat and potatoes of what this team is, which is actions, including Carl and Rudy and lead playmaker X. Obviously that wasn't so much, or it wasn't Ant at all in this game, but it was Mike. And I really liked how the pieces fit around the fulcrum of Carl or Rudy, again, in the first quarter and kind of the whole first half. It looked really clean to me.
You know what else kind of stood out? And I think you tweeted about this, but like the unofficial mantra for this 23-24 Timberwolves season that I've coined is size matters. They're just really big. Like they're just a big team and a big lineup.
That lineup was nuts,
Like
man.
they just play, even when they brought in the what I'm going to call the Butler Brigade, which is just the third stringers towards the end, like Leonard Miller, Josh Minott. You just have all these guys that are super long. Like I don't know what some of those third string guys are going to turn out to be, but up and down the roster, I mean, outside of maybe Jordan McLaughlin and Mike Conley, everyone has like a plus wingspan and a plus height. So that is going to be part of their identity and philosophy. But it was really apparent when you watch them against a team like the Mavs, who are just a smaller team.
True,
right?
Yeah.
And it kind of amplified it. But man,
that they could go big and kind of like, and not lose like the speed battle of it, right?
Right.
Because Shakes was in at point guard and he's 6'6", but he can move. That the really big lineup was kind of what we started talking about last season. If they could go with a really big lineup with like Kyle Anderson as more of like a wing guard. Well, we probably should have been expecting this because we know Kyle's going to play more wing guard this season. So if you have him out there next to two bigs, as in this lineup we're talking about here, it was Rudy at the 5, Naz at the 4, Kyle at the 3, Troy Brown at the 2, and Shake at the 1. That's 6'6", 6'7", 6'9", 6'10", and 7'1", and not in like this feels like it's going to be exposed because it's big way.
Yeah.
It felt like a weapon because it was big. And I think that situationally can be part of, this team's identity this season when you do have minutes where Mike Conley isn't on the floor. You can go big and I think be effective.
Yeah, you on yesterday's pod with Jace, I think you guys talked a little bit about, you asked him at the end, what is your concern factor with the backup point guard role spot? Yeah. And that was something I think I'd kind of been feeding to you all summer. It's like, they don't really have like a quote unquote backup point guard or a backup quarterback. I mean, obviously Jordan McLaughlin has served in that role, but how healthy is he? That my concern is like a 0 now. Yeah. They might have too many backup point guards because Nickeil can play make. I mean, the turnovers with him, he does get a little so excited. Like he's a walking pre-workout, but he also was great. I mean, he can make plays. He knows how to kind of get Rudy the ball, set guys up. I thought Jaden had a couple nice passes today, and then Shake, and then all these other guys. It's like, you know what? If Mike were to miss, let's say 25 games, just maybe out of maintenance to keep him fresh for the playoffs, they're not going to have any problem whatsoever rotating guys in to play alongside Ant. And maybe like you say too, maybe Ant's doing a lot of lead ball handler stuff as well. But that was one thing in this game, because I keep coming back to, if you want to get into the depth, again, we had 48 minutes of real, non-real basketball in the desert. So we're going to be just drawing a lot of conclusions right now. But I mean, I even come back to like, I continue to think Kyle Anderson, who is the greatest free agent signing in franchise history, and that bar has always been pretty low, but like I still struggle to see where he plays at times because this team is so deep. Like I was impressed by Troy Brown, obviously Shake Milton, but this team has 9 guys at least, if you exclude Troy, that like have to play every single night. Have to play.
We talked to, they did a Zoom for us with Finch after the game, and Jace was kind of had that similar bell ring in his head that you did, where it's like, okay, like kind of feels like there's 9, 10, 11 guys who might feel like they're in the rotation mix, and it just doesn't feel like, given that none of those guys really feel like 12-minute guys. Like, how are you going to get to 9? And Finch kind of joked. He's like, every season I always like convince myself we're going to have an 11-man rotation to start it, but they're going to need to sort of prune that down. He suggested again that it's going to be 9, and the 9 would be the 5 starters plus Kyle Anderson, Naz Reid, Shake Milton, and wait, who am I missing here?
Kyle, Shake,
and Nickeil, because
yeah.
He started tonight. Yeah, so Kyle, Nickeil, Naz, and Shake as the 4 guys off the bench. But I even think that's going to be difficult to give all 9 of those guys maybe the minutes we're picturing. Like with Kyle, it's hard to give Kyle 24 minutes and Naz 22 minutes and Shake 18 and Nickeil 18, and it kind of feels like Nickeil's going to make a push to be even higher up in that pecking order than before. So again, champagne problems, like, you have 5 or 6 bench pieces when you can only maybe play 3 or 4. But that's just going to be something I think that will be ironed out in training camp and in the preseason. And somebody who's good, or that we like, might not be in the rotation to start the season. I think Troy Brown would be one example of that, but maybe even it's Shake having his minutes, having a small, I mean, it's got to be somebody, right?
I know. I'm just saying. I was texting people today about like the Shake Milton like retirement party. Like when he's all said and done, like where do they hang the jersey? Is there enough room in the rafters? Because that's the type of guy that this team I feel like has never really had. Like you've been like, it'd be great if Jamal Crawford could do it, but it's like, yeah, he's 39. Like it'd be great if Jalen Noel could do it, but it's like, yeah, he doesn't really like to shoot threes or make them. So he was great. But yeah, I go back to the Nickeil thing, and you saying that he is going to just force Finch to have to play him a lot. I'm
maybe
sure
Shake will too. Maybe both of them. Yeah.
I'm sure you and I might do like a prediction podcast later this month, but I'm not even sure if the numbers make sense here. But I think Nickeil is going to finish the season top 5 in minutes played for the team.
Wow.
Because I mean, if you want to break that down, it's like, okay, if Mike Conley were to miss 25% of the games, or whatever, and maybe Nickeil is that natural starting point guard just alongside Ant. I also think he's just going to be the first guy.
I feel like those going off of today, man. When it was Shake and Nickeil in there, Shake was the point guard. I wrote that down in my and not to make any sort of, again, one game or whatever, but I marked that down of like it seemed like Shake was more the initiator.
And maybe devil's advocate is that's Ant when Ant's back. You know what I mean? And then still they want a plus defender next to Ant to have some. I mean, there's a nasty lineup. I like Troy Brown. I watched way too many Lakers games last year, but like there's a Nickeil, Ant, Jaden, Troy Brown, Rudy Gobert lineup that they could mess with a little bit. That's like teams might just start giving points back. Like he just take these points back. Like that defense is really tough. So there's just so many options they can do. But it was cool. I mean, Nickeil took 5 shots. They're all from 3, and his shot looks reformed. The Wolves might lead the league in guys who have weird form, but he hit them right. I mean, even and down into the Butler brigade. But like even Josh Minot, I know for a fact is reformed his shot mechanics a little bit. Leonard Miller didn't kick anyone when he took a 3. So there's just a lot. There's so many options, and depth will be, depth was their strength last year, even though they lost Carl for 52 games. But really, with that depth is what allowed them to still make the playoffs. Right. And the depth again this year is just going to be kind of what this team leans on. They can do so many things, and it's going to come to a point where it's going to be a problem at times, where Finch is going to lean into one rotation and be like, dude, just put Shake in or put Nickeil in or whatever, and we'll probably be right. But that'll be the toughest thing for Finch to try to navigate that puzzle every night of how is he going to build his rotation.
I liked this quote from Finch after the game, speaking about Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Shake Milton in particular. He said, those two guys, it's not their job to score for us. It's their job to create offense. Sometimes it'll be for themselves. Sometimes it'll be for their teammates. I like that, and I can picture that. And it's the bumpers, right, that kind of do need to be in place to be like, hey, at any time, we're not saying not score, but there's going to probably be 3 other offensive options out there that are primary, to you. Finding that sort of balance, I think they're really excited that Shake and Nickeil can fit that, right? Can fit that role. Let's grab our first break here, Kyle. Been telling everybody about Falling Knife and how Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis is having Wolves Fest next Saturday, October 14th, 4 p.m. Is kind of when it's going to start. 5 p.m. Me and Britt are going to do a show. 6:30, the Wolves play the Knicks, and we'll watch that in the brewery as well. You and I working behind the scenes, kind of put some things together with Wolves merch to be there, some giveaways and stuff we're going to be doing. Obviously, those of you who have been locking back in on the Wolves and the pod, have heard me talking about this a lot, but we really are excited, 1, to be working with Falling Knife again this year, but 2, for this event in particular is always kind of a fun way to kick off the year. And also this Saturday, the 7th, Falling Knife is having their anniversary party. And I'm going to head over there at some point on Saturday afternoon. But if you haven't been to Falling Knife before, maybe you can't come. You're busy on the 14th, but you want to check out what this place is about. That's this Saturday that Falling Knife will be having their anniversary party, October 7th, kind of all afternoon into the evening there as well. So kind of put these next 2 Saturdays on your map. If you're looking to go out to a brewery, do consider Falling Knife. Particularly the 14th when I'll be there with Britt doing the show, and then obviously Falling Knife is showing all Wolves games throughout the entire season.
I've got my Falling Knife pint glass here with some cold brew and some other vitamins trying to get me back. But no, I'm excited for you guys to have Wolves Fest. They've been a great partner. They have great beer. They're great people behind the scenes and stuff. And then on Saturday too, like go celebrate them and their anniversary, October 7th. To many people is the greatest day of the year.
Yeah.
And also
Kyle Theige's birthday. Let's go.
also, and then the
It's
Twins.
your anniversary as well.
Yeah, it's my anniversary as well. So the Twins also play that day at 3:45. I know you were enjoying some Twins festivities last night. So it's a great. The weather's supposed to be. It's a great, put on some shorts and a crew neck sweatshirt, and it's a great weekend for Minnesota sports. I think this is the first time in don't quote me on this, but in 92 years that all four men's Minnesota teams play on the same weekend. So you got Vikings, Chiefs, and we got another Wolves, Mavs part 2 again on Saturday morning, which is going to be. I'm just going to spend my morning just watching fake basketball by myself, drinking mimosas. But no, shout out to Falling Knife, and I'm happy anniversary to them and to me. So what's next on the docket, boss?
I have Rudy and Naz on here.
Yeah, good call. Okay, we missed them.
To discuss them. Which one do you want to start with?
I was texting Jace throughout the game. I thought Rudy was good, or good Rudy today. Not getting the ball a lot, just kind of doing what Rudy did. He had 3 good blocks. They were all pretty athletic blocks, but then he also had some things too around the rim. What do you think Rudy Gobert's vertical is? Because there are moments where he just doesn't jump, and it is driving me crazy. Like, there's a lot of finger rolly stuff around the rim or whatever. So it's like, hey, can you just jump for that? And he tries to stretch out to get it with his feet on the ground. And it was really, there were some frustrating moments. But again, he had a couple.
I love the actions to get him the ball.
True.
In
Yes.
those
Yes.
places.
Yep.
That was as good of a finding Rudy by the basket, not in a pick and roll situation as I've seen. Again, that's kind of the whole structure versus flow sort of thing. I thought, and I've said this on many episodes already this season, I was kind of I think that's going to be a process to figure out having an offense that has a structure, but also allows for some free flowing player movement. It looked really good today.
No, it did, for sure.
That take is not aging well. They, at the very first possession of the game, it was a scripted action for Jaden twice. Carl wasn't able to find him. Dallas kind of top locked the action, wasn't there. And I love Carl's head is the clock was ticking, and he goes, okay, let's get into a simple action. Me and Mike Conley pass and chase, pick and roll, pick and pop. He hits the 3 right there. If you want to best understand, and I asked Finch about this, I was like, hey, was that first possession of the game a good example of what you've been trying to describe to us about the idea of structure and flow kind of coalescing? And he said yes. So if you miss this game, go check out that very first possession of the game. It ends with a Carl pick and pop 3. I think that's the idea, that the structure to start a possession allows them to kind of keep the structure throughout the possession once things even start to get hairy and people start freelancing. And Rudy is really, him in particular, he's going to benefit from that. And I think Carl's 3-point shooting is also going to benefit from that early offensive structure.
There was also, I don't remember what the action was or how the play led to it, but there was that play where Naz, I think, gets the ball in the corner and maybe pump fakes and drives baseline and then draws 2 defenders and finds Rudy. That was just, again, I wrote down in my phone, I was like, I'm just glad that they re-signed Naz. I don't know, there's no take there, there's no analysis. It's just, He continues to be awesome, and it'll be interesting, right? Because this is, I know we highlighted Shake and Troy a little bit at the top, but this really is the run it back tour for this team. Okay, so it wasn't a drive, yeah. But that play was just a little. This team, if they figure it out with this run it back tour, and most of the guys from last year, if they can figure out pull all the right strings and buttons for their 3-headed front court monster of Naz, Carl, and Rudy. I mean, those guys all do such unique, different things that is kind of what gives me hope about some of this stuff. Is man, they have a lot of skill. And if they can get Rudy the ball in the right spots and get away from, last year in the preseason, it was just post-ups, right? Or it was just things that drove you, you were losing your mind. So if they can get away from that and just get it more in the action or just swinging the ball around. Again, I wasn't trying, other than there's still some visual things with Rudy that, again, I wish he would just physically dunk the ball more or do more physical things, but he didn't hurt you at all today. Yes, he's a $40 million center who gave you 9, 8, and 3, but he did exactly what he was supposed to do. He was a big reason they got out to like a 25-point lead early in the early second quarter. So he was great. And then again, Naz Reid. I mean, what else can you say? That's kind of for as much as I'm Jaden, like you're Naz, like he was just special. And it's a really good thing that they locked him up because he unlocks a lot of different things. And as much as you keep preaching structure, I feel like Naz Reid might be the least structured. When he's out there, it's just street ball. I mean, he gets a rebound with one hand, keeps it in his right hand, like Statue of Liberty, and just goes down. He's like, I'm going to play point guard for possession.
But again, that possession where you're talking about where he dropped it off to Rudy, like that starts with structure. It's a double drag up top, right? It's the two big, set the screen for Mike, and then hit Naz on the roll. And then he's just flowing, right? He's reading the floor. He's looking for the bucket himself. And the big comes over and he drops it off to Rudy. Like Naz, I agree. He is better in flow. He was the best at it. He was the player it made the most sense for last season, where he seemed to be enacting the ethos of what, Finch wants the offense to be. But again, one preseason game, I'm a little bit more encouraged by the idea that added structure doesn't take away some of that free flowing, like you said, whatever, we'll call it street ball, like figuring it out on the fly type of offense that benefits Ant, benefits Mike Conley at times, certainly benefits Naz. There's a lot of guys who can be hindered by overstructure on this roster, but that's not what they're aiming at here, right? They're aiming for the proper amount of offensive structure, play sets, calls, positioning for spacing on the floor. I believe in it a little bit more than I certainly did 4 hours ago.
And I don't know if you agree with this. I might be so far off base, but one of the things I always think that Naz is more successful in a free-flowing kind of, not street ball, but just, kind of pick-up game basketball stuff is because, and there's been different regimes, right, and different coaching staffs, but Naz is the second longest tenured Timberwolf on this team behind Carl, is that I think Naz grew up and was like trained on structure, right? I mean, he knew the Iowa Wolves system better than the Wolves. Like he knew the system better than the players in the big leagues because he had kind of learned it through the Iowa Wolves reps and getting his chops up there. So I think Naz knows the structure so well, and it allows him to then, again, we're just going to make football analysis and analogies all fall and winter, but like he's so good and knows the offense so well that it allows him then to kind of break off in moments like that play you just showed that allow him to take structure, which was a structured play and a structured set, and then, modify it a little bit and put his own spin on it. So it's just, it's really fun watching Naz play. I mean, I'm sure you like watching Naz sometimes as the big or as kind of a center, but I like watching him with Rudy because I think he's an underrated passer, and his ability, again, like Carl, to put the ball on the ground opens up so many things around the entire perimeter, but also for Rudy as well.
And I think he is going to play both. Like, for sure. I think Naz is not going to exclusively be a 4. He wasn't today. They went, it struck me as what will probably be the rotation for the season because it looked a lot like last season's rotation, just with Nikhil. Like Nikhil was the last guy out there, which is what Ant always did, right? Like Ant would play the entire first quarter or the entire third quarter. They kind of did that with just Nikhil doing it instead. And they took Gobert and Conley out first. They replaced him with Anderson and Milton. And then so now Cat is out there at the 5, right? Because Rudy's off the floor. Cat had like a minute of playing the 5 there. And then Naz came in, and it was just Naz as the only big out there. And I marked that down in my notes because there was, or is, I should say, some theory that, Naz is exclusively going to play the 4. Well, that wasn't the case in the first preseason game, in a game where they looked like they had a targeted rotation. This wasn't like, randomly he's out there for a bit playing center. I think he is going to some, which Naz has an advantage in at times with the speed. He can also be at a disadvantage, right? If he's out there at the 5, he can get beat up on the interior a little bit defensively. But I thought that was noteworthy that he's going to do it some. And then when he was at the 4, man, it looked like the speed and the finesse that we saw from him before he got hurt. And after Carl came back in those 3-4 games, it looked a lot like that, felt a lot like that, and I think should be encouraging in the idea that maybe it's Naz week that was only 3 or 4 days, and what was so encouraging about that and what it quote unquote unlocked. You watch this game and you go, okay, I see that in the context of this roster as well, and I think that's a big deal.
I had one other stat written down. I just went and looked it up to make sure I had the right number. But you know what else was pretty cool? So they win 111-99. Preseason game. I get all that. I actually don't really know much about the Mavs because again, I don't know why they started 2 rookies or whatever, but maybe that's just trying things out. But there will be times where the Wolves in real basketball play teams that are like Dallas and smaller, right? And 60-36 points in the paint. The Wolves scored more than half their points just around the basket, and the listener can just trigger memories already of like Naz catching the ball with a smaller guy on him and just literally putting him in the basket. Carl was doing the same thing. Luka Garza was. I mean, the Wolves use their size to an advantage. I remember Finch was saying that last year. It's like, we have size, but what does it mean if you don't do something with it? And
I mean, how many times last season, how many games would you say you felt like the Wolves really capitalized on their size advantage?
3. I mean,
right? I mean,
yeah.
Honestly, and it doesn't mean obviously they won 42 games. It wasn't a requirement of last season's team to capitalize on the size to win games. They found other ways to do that. But again, playing against a small team in the preseason, they absolutely capitalized on their size advantage in this game. And you wonder if it was 3 last year or if it was 8 last year, and you bump that up to 28 this year. How many more wins does that equal? Right? I don't know. Like, does that cannibalize some other things elsewhere? Whenever that happens or whatever it did happen last year, I was like, oh, okay, that was a game where the opponent really had an issue with being able to match up with and handling the Wolves' physicality. And it happened. It happened today in this game against Dallas. And I mean, we'll see how much it happens during the regular season. But I got to believe it's going to happen probably substantially more this season than it did a year ago. Let's move over to Jaden McDaniels. In this game, I thought, I guess that would probably be, if the number one discouraging thing from this game was that Ant didn't play, number 2 would be Jaden picking up that 3rd foul in the second quarter and doing the got to go to the bench because you're in foul trouble sort of thing that we saw so many times last season. I think they have some more parameters in place this season to be able to not have to have Jaden guarding the ball all the time. Nikhil's going to be able to do that some. I think Shake will, Ant will. Jaden doesn't need to guard Luka Doncic every single possession when they play Dallas during the regular season. I think that helps some of the foul trouble, but that was, I don't know. I guess that is one dark mark or whatever on today's game.
Yeah, there's no pushback on that. I mean, there's probably not 5 guys that are better at drawing fouls than Luka, right? I mean, just kind of call a spade a spade. But you don't like to see him with that 3rd foul. I think we talked about this you and Britt during the summer or something where, and I don't know if this was a Finch thing, but just getting Jaden to just accept that he starts every like a point
that was
spread.
From the Q&A with Finch.
And Britt, just like, Jaden, hey, when you take off your warm-up and you go through starting lineups, like, just know that you already have 2 fouls.
Yeah.
And it makes it a lot easier. So then you only think you have the budget for 4 more. It is, I don't know if it's chicken or egg. I don't know how to go back and forth. It's like they don't always need them, right? Because you do kind of have Nikhil now. You do have some other options. Again, I'm kind of bullish on Troy Brown right now. We'll see if that changes. But you do – he had a couple moments today. He had like 5 rebounds in the limited minutes, but where I felt like he maybe dug in a little more and helped out getting rebounds. Dallas is very small, but they only had 7 offensive rebounds. So, I mean, Jaden kind of jumped in there as well to help out. But, yeah, a lot of it's going to come down to how long can he stay on the floor, and you want him on the floor as much as possible. And then, I know you talked about this with Jace on Wednesday as well, but like, if you're going to pay him all that money, which I am very pro doing, you don't want him to spend a lot of that time cashing checks on the bench. So I don't know. I think he's in a tough spot because he's always he's a physical defender too, right? So you're just going to draw some fouls against these super creative guys like Luka, like Harden and stuff. But I don't know. It wasn't a dark mark for me today, but it's a dark mark in the sense of what else was a dark mark today, right?
That's what I'm saying. If we're trying to do both of them, I guess it would be that. But yeah, overall, and even Jaden had a lot of encouraging plays. The fast break that led to the dunk with Kyle Anderson, like the finesse, the physical. I mean, just a handful of times. There was like one play, I think it was in the first quarter, where Jaden got the defensive rebound and pivots, and he like puts that first dribble out like way in front of him, like, yeah. And he's like, all right, like, let's go in a way that, like, I see Giannis do that sometimes. And there's just something to that when a big, and I know Jaden's more like a 3 on this team, but he is 6'11", and he does have the capability to kind of lead the break himself, as well. Like grabbing that and going, that's not something Jaden fully had last year, and kind of didn't have at all maybe 2 years ago. Like that real individual confidence to lead the break, initiate the offense himself. I think that's where, when we do the whole like, oh, how many shots can he get? How much usage can Jaden get? That's where nobody's going to say anything to him about getting out in transition, whether that's running with the ball or, running alongside another player and looking for his cuts and angles in transition to score. I mean, he should be taking 2-3 shots a game in transition. That should be easy money for him and effective as well. I think I liked seeing that tonight, and it's something in the perfect Jaden McDaniels season. I think there's a lot of that if that all plays out.
Can we? I don't have any. I literally can't force myself to say anything else about that game. But it was one game. So do you have any other thoughts, or can we? I know I texted you late last night. I just said, hey, do you want to role play tomorrow? Which then I had to follow up with another text of like about Jaden's contract. But you did talk a lot about Jace. I think you highlighted when the deadline would be this October for getting a deal done.
23rd, yeah.
Yeah, you talked about some of the Vassell stuff. But can we talk just a little bit more? Because
no, sure. That is the Jaden conversation right now, is the fact that he doesn't have an extension, and what does that look like?
I am like, Coop, put this on a banner or something. Like, put this on the bottom of the screen. Like, I am very well aware that I'm biased when it comes to Jaden. I've been a big fan of his, but I'm starting to see some weird conversations, and it ties back into things you and I talked about with other people this summer. But like, so Vassell gets his number, right? At like, basically, I know you said there were some weird incentives in there, but close to about 5.29.5 a year, or 5 for 30, right?
Yeah, 5,135 is the number for him.
So Jaden will probably be looking at $30 million a year, if not more. And you're starting to see people be like, well, you can't give him that much money because he averaged 14 and 4 last year, right? He's going to have to average 20 and 9 next year. I don't think you believe, and I'm pretty sure the team doesn't believe that Jaden might ever hit those numbers. And it comes down to they just don't have pie to give him, right? Like, there's not. He doesn't have the Mikal Bridges in Brooklyn role. Right, he doesn't.
And maybe he could, if he was on that team and was given that role, maybe could average 20. I don't even know if that's exactly what, but whatever. The Bridges level of production and usage and all that sort of stuff.
But if I were to truly role play with you as his agent, and again, like I'm a big fan of Jaden McDaniels, but I'm also a big fan of the team and roster building. And I want them to be able to have somewhat cap space to sign more Shake Miltons down the road. But I can't take all my biases aside. I don't know what leverage the team has.
Yeah.
I really don't. And again, like, everyone else has eaten, right? Like, this is the real story. But I was in a wedding a couple of years ago. I wasn't the best man. I wasn't the groom. But like, I was on the roster. I was okay. And the groom and stuff went up to eat, and it was a buffet style. And everyone just was loading up food because they're so stressed and they've gotten through the day. And congratulations to that couple. But it got down to me, and I was just like, I love a buffet. So I was about to just scoop as much fucking food onto this plate as I could. And someone's like, well, you got to leave some food for the other guests. I was like, wait a second. I'm part of this rotation as well. Like, I'm just as important as the best man. So Carl has his fat contract that got all NBA, and Rudy got his big extension, and Ant got his extension. And like, why does Jaden have to take less money? Because why? I'm just curious. Like, again, if I was Jaden's agent, Do you know why the Rudy Gobert trade is looked upon as so bad and dumb? It's because you didn't want to give up Jaden. So you gave up 2 more picks, right? And for anyone that thinks, well, yeah, he punched a wall. Like, dude, that's not going to hurt his stock at all. That's not even being discussed in negotiations. So the only reason I say that is because I'm starting to see people be like, oh, are they going to be able to extend him? I don't think they will. I think that he has them in a tough situation where this probably has to drag out.
Because, Kyle, what is even the alternative? To your point, it's like, if Jaden...
Why shouldn't he be paid?
Well, what if Jaden's agent says, nope, 200? You know, it's gotta be that. Like, what do I, as Tim Connolly, do in that situation? Well, what I probably do is I say, let's roll it into restricted free agency. Then, like, we're gonna match whatever you get. Like, but let's see who's gonna do it. Again, it's the DeAndre Ayton situation with Phoenix from 2 years ago, who has the same agent as Jaden does. The only other lever Tim Connolly can pull is trading him. And anybody listening to that immediately rolls their eyes at that. I roll my eyes at that. That doesn't make any sense, because the worst case scenario for the Timberwolves going forward is, okay, this double bigs thing doesn't work, and 2-3 years from now, like, players have been traded, contracts have expired, whatever, and you have Ant and Jaden. Like, that exists as a worst case scenario, which is not that bad. So I feel, as Tim Connolly in this role play, over a barrel in just needing to kind of either oblige to what the demands are, let him go to restricted free agency, match whatever his number is, or the other lever is trading him. And probably getting a really good return back. If it was 2 first-round picks or whatever it was with Utah the year before, like, maybe you get some sort of awesome package back. But it's hard for me to make any sense of what that package is, given the context that you have Anthony Edwards on the rise, ready to go. He needs another young player to be in his window with him. Not to mention they have the same agent. Like, you're not going to pull the trade him lever, so you just got to kind of match or you just need to accept his number, or you just need to match whatever he gets in restricted free agency, and allow yourself to be open to the idea that might be $35 million plus a year, and that leads to a different type of problem, because now you have 4 players on your roster making the max or near the max. And that's not going to work from a luxury tax standpoint. So maybe then you do need to trade a Rudy or a Carl or whatever somewhere down the line. But for Jaden to be the one that you would say that's not going to be the one we pick, I'm with you. That
I don't understand why, again, going to the buffet thing, why, like, everyone else got paid and fed. Even Naz Reid got paid this summer, right? Troy Brown Jr., who I don't think will start the season in the rotation, makes more money than Jaden this year. Mm-hmm. Wendell Moore, who might spend more time living in Iowa than in Minnesota, makes like $400,000 less than Jaden. So I don't, again, this is a weird stance for me to have. I sound like his cousin, but like, why should I? Jaden even said it at media day, right? He's like, if I was on another team, I think I'd be the best scorer or the second best scorer. Like, I'd be one of the best players. I think that man has already sacrificed a lot just being a really high leverage 3-and-D guy. I don't think him or his representation is going to be like, well, now we also have to sacrifice financially because the team has painted themselves into a tough situation. And to the trade stuff, and also, I'm very confident that they will not get rid of him. And I think you are as well.
And do you get why I'm bringing that up? Is
100%.
What are the other options?
Right. There's only so many levers.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But I do think he will get paid at some point. I think that number will make a lot of people. I think the Woj bomb will make us all feel relieved that you have Jaden and you have Ant and you even have like a Naz like signed long term or whatever, and you'll figure out the rest with the big centers moving forward. But I also think when that number comes out, some people are going to then say, okay, you know, this isn't, you're getting paid for future performance or production, not past performance. And I'm just telling you right now, and I think the team would back this up. I don't think there is a ton more room for him to do stuff with this roster the way it is, because I don't, like you said, what are you going to do? Double his usage? They're not going to do that. Like they want Carl to take 8 to 10 threes. They want Ant to be, a 30-point a game guy. So I've just been marinating on that also, for a while, but I wanted to vent about it.
No, that's good. And to the like, how much can adjust if a guy has a 3-and-D role? Like, how much can that person be paid? Well, I would point to Dylan Brooks from this summer, who just signed a 4-year 80. Right? That's what it was, right? 4 years 80, or maybe a little over 80. Like, and I know a lot of people don't like Dylan Brooks, but if we can remove the personality stuff, like he's a good 3-and-D player,
right?
Like, that's the role he serves, and is being paid $20+ million a year to do so at a significantly older age, I think, than Jaden, and with less of an offensive bag than Jaden has too. So this isn't how it works anymore with contracts where you go, oh, he's only averaging 14 and 4. That means that puts a cap on what they can. It's just not it. We could go through a ton of different examples. That's not how NBA teams build out their rosters anymore. They build out based on impact of winning. And Jaden has such a bigger impact on winning than the 14 and 4 that he averages. That isn't a homer. That isn't a bias. That is, if you asked any executive around the league, they would say he is wildly more valuable than his counting stats suggest. And to your point, the counting stats are as low as they are because of the roster in which he plays on that doesn't allow him. Like, the rebounding stuff with Jaden is the dumbest thing. I mean, like, it's like he guards the ball. He guards the ball. Or last season, every possession, that's how he guarded. How do you guard Luka Doncic or John Morant or whoever? Everyone's seen it. How do you guard that guy and they take the step back 3 on you? It's his job to go get that defensive rebound then?
He's rushing.
That doesn't happen. Nobody who guards the ball rebounds at a high rate because it's positioning on the floor by the rim. Yes, Jaden being 13 points a game and making 30 million. Yeah, there's something there. You go, yeah, I mean, I'd like to see a little bit more than that. And that will probably happen this year too, to some extent. But the rebounding one, those just aren't the numbers people use anymore. Or the people that are making the decisions, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion. And you can think that 14 and 4 doesn't equal this. The people who get paid to make these decisions don't equate value that way. That's just not how it goes. Dudes
who, we're going to do this all for the next 4 months. I'm so excited. But dudes who rush the passer typically don't lead the team in tackles. You know what I mean?
I kind of like that analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. But again, the president of this team said at Media Day that if there was an identity of this team moving forward, it's going to be defense. And the head coach echoed that. And then the franchise player, or the face of the franchise, or the youngest star in the league, said that Jaden's the most important player on the team. So all I'm trying to say is that this just goes out to my dad, who's always like, why haven't they gotten this done? Should I be concerned? I'm not concerned. This isn't, the Ant one was just what you slide the scale. How much can we pay him? Put his face on the hotel, and then here's the money. The Jaden one is, if they just offered Jaden the max, he would also be on the front of a hotel. But you clearly can't do that much because that's north of 200.
And you need to be diligent if you're Tim Conley, too. You do have a massive luxury tax problem coming. So negotiating, and if you can get Jaden for 31 a year rather than 37, that is going to change.
There's your Shake Milton.
Or it's just going to, it could be the difference between needing to trade Cat or not.
Yep.
It could. I mean, and it depends on these different iterations of it. But like $5-6 million in annual value is a big deal in the context of the Timberwolves because they have an insanely expensive team.
And on October 5th, we're probably 10 weeks away, we think, maybe, fingers crossed. We don't still have much clarity on what ownership is going to do in terms of luxury tax and second apron and all that stuff. I wrote this down because I think it's worth just mentioning that Mark Lowry was at these games, or this game today. He's in Abu Dhabi. He was sitting courtside, as was Glenn Taylor. But
As with Steve Harvey.
Hold on. I hate you. I think
no undershirt.
I think ownership, until this plane is comfortably landed and parked in the gate, is just another aspect of all of this, right? Because new ownership has played a big role in a lot of these changes, both I think some of the roster, but also the front office and all these other things. And until that is 100%, voted on at Board of Governors, I just think it's another thing to keep in mind. And it does, right, tie into the Jaden stuff, because Jaden's the final domino in this salary structure for the next 3 to 5 years. And while you and Britt did a great job, and you and Jay's I don't think anyone really I wanted to ignite you up a little bit and just talk about why I think that it's not done. And I think Jaden has all of the leverage in the world, whether you like it or not. It's just everyone wants him here. The market says he should be paid really well. And every time another guy from that draft class gets paid, it's a lot of money. And Devin Vassell got a lot of money.
I just think about it somewhere in between the Vassell and Bane number. I think that's where it's going to land. And, to get nerdy with it, that's going to be, 22%. Like the max he can get is 25%. Vassell got 17%. Bane got 24%. Jaden's going to get 20, 22. I don't know. Something in that range. And I understand why they're grinding away at that from both sides, which has been my line on it the whole time. Economically, I think that absolutely makes sense. Kyle, let's wrap this up with our sponsor, Prize Picks. We did not do well
this looks good.
in our Prize Picks last week, but we are going again here with the Sunday slate of NFL games. Prize Picks, again, is the sponsor of the show, prizepicks.com, or the Prize Picks app, promo code Dane for a $100 sign-up bonus. This is fun. I actually just doing this as a segment on the show because it's a little different spin on fantasy football. I know this has nothing to do with the Timberwolves, but Kyle and I like this. It's the end of the podcast, so roll with us here. I got my two up on the screen there, Kyle, and then I'll throw in two more of yours there, and we'll have our little 4-pick power play for the weekend. I got Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard not scoring a touchdown. It's more or less than 0.5. Yeah, right? That. Isn't that a good, isn't it more likely than not that
the Panthers
don't get a rushing touchdown from their, I guess it could come from, is Mike Tolbert still on that team? It could come from somebody else. But I think that I like that one. And then I also went, I think where everyone's really sour on the Bengals, I think this is time for Joe Mixon to kind of get it going, have his 100-yard rushing game. So I took more than 68.5 rushing yards for him. Those are my two picks. What do you got?
Oh, you got a couple hundred in the account. I like that. Breece Hall over 60.5 rushing yards. The Denver Nuggets. The Denver Broncos give up the most points and yards they're just, the Denver Broncos defense is terrible, but they give up the most, I think, yards and fantasy points to running backs. Breece Hall is without a snap count now. Delvin is cooked in New York, so I would say Breece Hall over 60.5 rushing yards. And then my guy, the Jaden McDaniels of the NFL, Anthony Richardson, over 1.5 passing, rushing, and receiving touchdowns.
Okay.
There's a lot of great running quarterbacks right now in the league, but I think Anthony Richardson might be the best. So he's always a threat to score in the red zone just with his legs, but also at home against Tennessee. Not going to be a high-scoring game, but I like him to throw for one and run for one. So that's over 1.5 passing, rushing, receiving touchdowns. I'm glad this is our first week doing it. I know some people have said that we did Prize Picks last week, but I'm home now.
Not on the screen.
Not on the screen. So I'm back in my office, and this will be the first time. Preseason, our Abu Dhabi Prize Picks were last week. This is the real season for us now.
You're right. That's exactly right. We're gonna this one we're gonna hit, and if all four of those go, you get 10-1 on whatever you were to wager on that.
I'm gonna take a picture of that. Thanks.
Again, thanks to Prize Picks for again being a sponsor this season. PrizePicks.com or the Prize Picks app. I think just a fun way to have something extra going on Sunday for football, or also once basketball season gets going, they got stuff for baseball here too. I mean, I just view it as an additional way to play a fantasy sport, and I think it's
And it's
fun.
again, if you're into this type of stuff or not, it's one of those things. Again, I know Chris Hine had a really good speech on Monday about just supporting the Star Tribune and stuff, and I think that's really important because neither of you really mentioned this, but a lot of times when Chris is going on the road, that's how we get the quotes. I mean, from a journalistic perspective, it's great to have real reporting and journalistic standards. I don't know what those things are, but it's also good to just get the quotes, right? Because that's how we build memes and have mottos and make merch, and that's how I live my life. So, support people like Falling Knife or some of our other sponsors that support us so that Dane and I can continue to grow this out. I mean, now we have all these different social channels, right? Like TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, but we want to continue to provide this, you and I, for free. So if you can support Prize Picks, support Falling Knife, support some of the other people locally and nationally that support us. So appreciate it.
And hopefully they're fun things. I think Prize Picks is fun to play.
I enjoy eating and drinking and gambling, so they are fun for me, Dane. Thank you.
Yes. So prizepicks.com, Prize Picks app, Falling Knife. If you come out this Saturday, I'm planning on going over there for a little bit for their anniversary party. And then, the big one is October 14th. We'd love to see you there at Falling Knife for Wolf Fest, which is hopefully the start of something annually that is cool that we do. This is step one, and we can build it out to be more and more over the years. But to be able to do that, we'd love to have. It would help a lot to have a lot of people come out to this, and just a fun place to watch the game. I mean, like, I kind of just being at home, obviously not in Abu Dhabi watching this game. It's like there's part of me who wishes I was at Target Center watching tonight, and just kind of being around people and feeling the energy. I think that's the hope with the first. It's the two Abu Dhabi games, and then October 14th is the next preseason game for the Wolves. So if you're feeling that itch, we'll be out there, and looking forward to seeing y'all.
And we should say too, as we talk about sponsored and stuff, if you are listening to this and you are a fan or you're a business that wants to support a small business like we're trying to do right here, like, we're always open to new partnerships and sponsors. So I think Dane has an email in his Twitter account that you can reach out to, but also too, to kind of close the week. I know that the Wolves play again on Saturday morning, but this is kind of the first week for us back in the saddle, right? I mean, this is from a schedule standpoint, I think this is how we're going to try to play it out every week moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's Chris on Mondays, Jace on Wednesdays, Kyle on Fridays, and then kind of
wherever we can catch Britt, like wherever we can plug him in.
Britt is our utility infielder on Tuesdays or Thursdays. So next week coming up. I don't think I'm going to do an episode after the game on Saturday, but Chris and I will record on Monday morning, so that'll be the next episode up in your feed. Then me and Britt will do preview the wings position on Tuesday, and then we'll give Jace the scraps on Wednesday.
Well, I think the team gets back on Sunday. I think they fly back after the game on the 7th or whatever. So next week will be more of a normal training camp. Probably a lot of audio or
quotes,
quotes and stuff. Getting back to the facility because they're out of the country this week. Right. So I think things will get back to normal from the Wolves' perspective next week. But I'm excited. There's been a ton of Dane Moore content this week, so that's, I think, our plan for the season is as many pods as possible. And again, on YouTube or on TikTok or Instagram, anywhere you want to find content, the goal is to give you as much as you can handle.
Yes, sir. He's Kyle Theige. You can follow him on Twitter at Kyle Theige. Did you guys record over at
Phil and I did a little Flagrant House this week. We talked just kind of media day stuff because Phil and I feel like we were the two biggest journalists there asking the hard-hitting questions. But no, I think we'll be going twice a week too once the season starts. But Score North is pretty focused right now on what's important, and that's this Twins playoff run.
Yeah, man, that's fun. Everyone should get into it. I had a blast at the game.
Baseball playoffs might be the best, and I'm a basketball guy through and through, and I know football, but I mean, I was jealous of watching Tuesday and Wednesday. Twins fans were. Yeah. It was a perception changing win. I mean, now if we want to turn into Twins talk, but like the city got
NFL,
big monkey off their back.
Yeah,
and this isn't a sports city anymore that hasn't had any sort of success. Like the Twins really cleared the palates for many people. So again, shout out to everyone that covers the Twins, that likes the Twins, but also the fans, because that place looked. Goosebumps, really. It was like that's what sports was all about, right? It's just standing up and screaming your lungs out and crying and waving towels around. So it's going to be fun this weekend.
I'm not going to lie. As I was walking out of the stadium, I was thinking, they won a series. I thought about the Wolves, and I'm like, man, like that would be a equally, if not even more, meaningful thing to win a playoff series. And I love that for.
I'm getting canceled
fans.
if the Wolves win a playoff series. I'm going to be walking out of that place without pants on, and I'm just going to be screaming. So it's cool. It was a reminder, seriously, about whether you're a Wolves fan, a Lynx fan, a Twins, Vikings, Wild, whatever, that this is an awesome, awesome sports city and state. And these teams, these organizations, if they can just figure their shit out, the fans will always be there. The fans is the best fans, I believe, in the country. So go Twins.
Again, he's Kyle Theige at Kyle Theige. I'm Dane at DaneMooreNBA. I will talk to you with Chris on Monday. Until then, peace out.